Right, welcome to the Watchdog with myself, Liesl Wilson. I am standing by on behalf of my colleague, Motshekga, who is in fact live and is going to be in conversation with various people just on the back of the matric and results announcement that obviously took place. Some interesting news coming through. We saw Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga really announcing that the class of 2022 having achieved an overall pass rate of 80.1%. It's the second high since 2019 is a fact that it was noted. So throughout the evening, we'll continue to monitor and really unpack what this means for the country, what this means for those who obviously want to take and pursue their education means further, and ultimately what impact this is going to have on the future labor force of South Africa, really looking at how we as a country are going to fit into that global sphere and compete against that future labor force. So all that and more coming up. Let's see what else we can expect. All right, it seems we're not done yet. So just unpacking what the minister, really highlighted again, 80.1% pass rate, just an increase from 2019. We saw that there have been, lots of challenges and factors that have impacted matriculants over the past 3 years. COVID-19, really looking at how, the ways of learning and how we're learning, also having to relook at, the modus operandi when it comes to that. So with that having happened, the increase in that pass rate for those who want to further education really also coming to the fore. This was all happening in Johannesburg. Also just stressing the minister rather stressing that they are placing a huge emphasis on regaining lost ground within the sector. The minister, also looking at ways to improve the system and perhaps what we can expect for the year to come. So with all that said, I do believe that my colleagues are on standby for some more action. Let me hand it over to them for now. All right, so let's take a look at some of the information, percentages that have obviously come through on the back of the announcement of this 2022 matric class rate, really having been broken down via provinces. The Free State pass rate sitting at 88.5%, an increase of 2.8%. Gauteng, 84.4%, an increase of 1.6%. KZN coming in at 83%. They increased by 6.2%. We saw the impact of the floods. We saw the impact of the riots. And, this really having taken a mental toll on some of the learnings that could have occurred. So it's obviously a welcomed increase there as well. Western Cape Province sitting at 81.4%, only up by 0.2%. Other info that's being reflected on your screens at this hour. Northwest 79.8%, increased by 1.6%. And then respectively, the Eastern Cape sitting at 77.3% and Mpumalanga 76.8%, both having increased by 4.2% and 2.9%. Just to wrap up the graphic on your screen, Northern Cape sitting at 74.2%. They were up by 2.7%. And Limpopo Province, last but not least, 72.1%. They also having increased by 5.3%. So on that note, with that information on standby, I'm going to hand over to my colleagues who are obviously on standby to bring us the latest in unpacking what these results mean.
The pass rate has reached 80.1%.
Live from Roodepoort, west of Johannesburg, from where this year's matric results were announced. Welcome to this special matric results edition of the Watchdog. My name is Motshekga, and here's what tonight's show is about.
The pass rate has reached 80.1%. the second highest since 2019, which is an improvement of 3.7% from last year. The number of bachelor passes has increased. It's an improvement of 8.9%. The number of diploma passes has improved, so it means there's an improvement to the left and really getting lesser and lesser students passing from the side.
Well, let's speak to the three provinces that contributed immensely to the improved result. And I'll start on my far left, and that is Mbali Fraser, who is KwaZulu-Natal's MEC for Education, the province that showed the biggest improvement this time around. In the middle, we have Tate Makwe, who is the MEC for Education in the province of the Free State, the province that came #1 overall. And I also have Mavungu Lerudi Ramakhanya, who is the MEC of Education in Limpopo, which is the second best improved province. And for the first time, you've gone out of the 60s now to the 7th. Congratulations to all of you, and thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's start with you, Ndata Makwe, if I may. Of course, not the first time. You just come back into being #1. What has been the secret to your formula?
Well, we get this question every time. Every year, people ask the same question. But I must say that one of the things that we try to do in the province of the Free State is to mobilize society, mobilize, executive council, members of the legislature, the communities themselves behind education. And specifically, we try to give support to the weaker learner. And that is why if you look at our performance in terms of progress learners, it's always high. Even last year, it was the highest. This year, I think we were second to Mpumalanga. But our key strategy here is to make sure that we make education a societal issue. We make sure that everybody, every parent, every teacher, the slogan that we use in the Free State is that and what is nice about it is that wherever you go, in the villages, you hear people saying that. Because people believe that their children can also perform. And I think we've been sending also a narrative that says there's nothing wrong with a black child. There's nothing wrong with a black teacher. And therefore making people understand that you don't have to attend an ex-Model C school to get 100%. In fact, I know the minister was not able to, roll out all the results. But I've seen that in one of the schools in Helbrun, for example, there's a school where a learner has attained 100% mathematics, 100% physical science. So this was intended to say to all of young people, you can make it. You don't have to allow anybody to pull you down. And I think we are succeeding by doing that.
Ms. Fraser, remember, last year it was the Eastern Cape, if I'm not mistaken, that earned the title of being the most improved province. This year, you are the one seem to have pushed the hardest, to really prove your worth.
Yeah, I think it's involvement of everybody, like what Tate said. We also involved everybody. We went to churches, communities. Everybody was is schooling. Communities must partake in whatever that is happening at school. But again, the teachers that we have, they are young, they are energetic. They work from Monday to Sunday sometimes. I think they've put more effort. Yeah, of course, even the parents supported us. Churches supported us. I even went to churches asking them to make sure that they're part of the schools next to them. It has been something for everybody in KZN. even during the examination times, it was like I'm saying everybody's writing exams in KZN. So I think if you make it a societal issue, definitely you will succeed. But again, the district directors from where I come from, they are working hard. It's like they're competing. I think it's like all of them are out, are making each and every effort in ensuring that come this time, their districts are where they are. So I think it's hard work. It's dedication, it's hard work, and being focused. That's all of us. All of us.
I meant for you. You were, for a while, a permanent feature of that 60% zone, and people would have been forgiven to think that for thinking that you are comfortable there and never going to get out. And here you are.
Yes, I think like my colleagues have already indicated, beside making education a societal issue, there is what we possess in Limpopo, which one is the skill that we have. We have got educators and principals that are experienced in education, which with more hard work, like the colleagues have said, we can really push. And you have got the younger generation of educators that are coming into the space with new ideas, having time. So we combine the two with more work that has been put around the camps, with more work that has been put when the learners. But remember, when we were preparing for the grade 12 exams, we had a lot of work that we did with the learners themselves. I had to move around the province to ask the learners to commit that you as a learner, before we can give you all the support, you are going to sit and face that paper. What is it that you are committing? And they did commit, and it ended up being what my colleagues are saying, that it was a societal issue. And the parents had to allow them to stay in camps. Remember, we had to keep them in the camps when they were writing exams, so that then we monitor that they are focused, we monitor that they are studying. And I think we should just say thank you to Team Education, to the province itself, and as we start to celebrate, then this should give us more energy to work harder.
So you are deliberate. In other words, a great deal of it didn't happen by chance.
No, it didn't. It didn't. We had to really work hard. Like colleagues are saying, when the district directors and the principals sit and plan, then they go execute the plans that we have agreed upon. The program of monitoring and giving support to underperforming schools also worked for us better, because the principals had to sit in a session to say, how do we then get out of this? When I joined the department, the first thing that we did was to move around the province, and we were displaying the results. So we will call all the principals and say, share amongst yourself, this is how you are performing. So when they leave those sessions, no one wanted to go back to where they were. And I think today we are able to say it can happen, we can do it, we can improve better. And I think my colleagues should know that Limpopo is coming after them.
Now, when we say all of you say you made sure that education was a societal issue. We're having this conversation. Yesterday and the day before, we're carrying stories of communities that had disrupted schooling. This started last week. When the inland provinces reopened, and we saw that again over the past couple of days, where people raise issues of service delivery, and when they are doing that, they're taking to the streets, often vandalizing school infrastructure, preventing children from going to school. We have a lot of vandalized, schools, equipment, computer equipment, laboratory equipment gets stolen, and the community is there, and very little often happens. So how far did you go in ensuring that education is indeed a societal issue in the broader sense and deals with these other challenges that these children have had to study under?
We work with our colleagues. For an example, MECs for COCTA, MECs for Human Settlement, right? We are part of the team that goes to, if there is a disruption in a particular community, education MECs would go as part of this to try and tell people to protect their own assets, because it's very, very important people to remember that these assets belongs to them. And indeed, if you look at the number of schools that we have, and the number of vandalism that may have happened, in terms of ratio, you'll always find that the ratio of the vandalized is very less compared to what it used to be, right? For an example, I'm sure you were writing a story about just recently, I think a day or two, about Paris, that's a town where I come from. I sent, communicated with all the principals just to give us feedback. Communities were very angry about the issues of water. They went overboard, they did wrong things. We must not actually condone what they did, including burning the mayor's mother's house. That was very, very wrong. But I think it was important to realize that despite all those challenges, the schools were saved. There was no windows that were cracked and stuff like that. But indeed, we cannot deny the fact that there'll always be opportunists. There'll always be people who fight for the right reason, but there'll be opportunists who use that for crime purposes. And these are the ones that we must arrest. These are the ones that we must mobilize the community to ensure that they don't buy those stolen goods. And if you remember, Vuyo, that this was an old campaign of COSAS way back in the 80s, where the schools were protected by their own communities. Because it's not possible to hire people to protect schools. It's not possible. And even arming them, because once you arm them, people will come thinking that there's even bigger issues, bigger things to steal in the school. And therefore, it actually will make them more vulnerable. So it's an ongoing process. It is not a process that you can just say, no, we have achieved it. But it's an ongoing process. But I think our communities are doing very, very well. If you take an area like Botshabelo, for example, we used to have a lot of gangsters there. Through education, working with the communities, we have almost eliminated gangsterism. And I think I've not looked at the results yet, but I think that Botshabelo has performed extremely well. And that is why Motewa, for example, one of our biggest districts, is now the best district in the country. And I think there's no small feat. The contribution of teachers, principals, and everybody else, the communities, the members themselves. And I think we're very, very excited about that.
Now, adding to your problems this past year was, of course, the floods, which destroyed a lot of school infrastructure, which made life miserable for a number of the kids who came through with improved results.
Vuyo, in whatever area where we had floods, we will provide them with mobile classrooms. There is not even one school where they did not get assisted from by the government. That would be the first one. But again, in terms of thugs, I went to all media houses. I went to Kozi, I went to Ikakasi, I went to Vuma. And I appealed to the parents that they must be part, they must go to schools. I had learners who were sleeping at school, but trust me, the parents were there too. There was one incident that happened in Georgetown where the thugs came in and they took their cell phones. From that day, it stopped because I went out I reached out to media houses and I appealed to the parents that if your child is going to study from 4 to 12, please be there. We've always been giving support in whatever challenge that they have. We prioritize the challenges at school. Even when you're talking about the shortages, you will hear people saying we are short, this and that, but we try by all means that we prioritize teaching and learning. That's where I think that's where our strong point is. There's no child who must not have a teacher. We might have challenges in different aspects, but we make sure that there's a teacher in front of the child, and there's a classroom, even if it's mobile classroom, but there is a classroom. There's not even one school where you'll find that it was damaged by a storm. We did nothing. No, we prioritize them. Even now in January, we had Tugela and Mzinyati. They have classes as I'm talking to you. We are focused. We make sure of that in whatever challenges that we have in the province, but our learners are in class and they're being taught.
Now, the challenge is these matriculants, but also just school-going kids in general go through, aren't confined, of course, to all these big societal problems. Often, there are problems that are created by the school, whether it's miscommunication or whether it's lack of, a common vision. I mean, only last week when schools were reopening, I remember we were running a couple of stories from Limpopo where in one school, there was, I think it was Malamulele, if I'm not mistaken, where it had been decided that, I don't know, 500 or 600 rands, whatever it was, is what a pupil has to pay, which meant that others who didn't have the money could not start their schooling. And now, how far have you gone in ensuring that such things really don't set this? Because you want them to hit the ground running as soon from day one when the schools reopen. These kinds of, I would say, artificial, and mind you, this was a no-fee school. So how do such things happen still?
I think you have put it correctly to say it starts with miscommunication. We as a department, we have got our own good policies which talks about participation of the parents through the SGBs. And to some level, they come into the school and form committees that assist the principal and the educators to run, but also take decisions. And if non-participation of the parents, it will lead to a decision that might not be well communicated. But the bottom line remained that with such decision, it should not stop the learning. The right of a learner should not be violated. And I think you'll remember when you were covering the story, we had to say whatever that the principal and the parents have decided should not be able to close up the future of a learner to be sitting in the class. And they went back to class because it was just about those parents that do not participate. We have got a school that you'll have 1,000 children, and when an SGB meeting is called, only 250 go. So it means the bigger chunk of them is not there. But like colleagues indicated for you, we are a rural province. And one of the things that have happened is that in each municipality you have got committees of education that royal leadership is sitting in. And we're getting so much support from our royal leadership, from the structures of the House of Traditional Leadership. When you were covering the story about roads, you will see that my colleague, the MEC, when she was there, the chief was there as well, to speak to the community to say, this has got nothing to do with education. Allow the children to go. When we had rains and the children could not cross, the police came in handy. So the departments, like Dr. Tate was saying, it crosses with us as a province having to work together. And then we plan. And I can give you one classical example. When we had strikes and the children were being stopped to go to school and the parents were out on the road, the community radio stations were running lessons. So you have got a child that is at home, a community radio station volunteers at time to run lessons. So they are covered in terms of what they should be doing at a school. And that's why really the emphasis on a societal matter continues to be the narrative for all of us.
Just mentioning traditional leaders, which then reminded me of something. I think it was from your province where the story came of like a pregnant young girls. I mean, this is a countrywide problem, and the reason I'm saying you reminded me of that because within that conversation we're talking about the role of parents, but of traditional leaders and other stakeholders in dealing with, because I mean, imagine a girl who was doing matric last year, but somewhere in the middle fell pregnant, and how their future would have been affected. Some of them may not have been able to even write their exams. And on a day like today, they were thinking, I could have been, one of the contributors to that #1 position that the Free State, that my Free State attained. Have you been dealing with those problems as well?
Oh, yeah, definitely. The issue of learner pregnancy is a serious problem for the whole country. But we manage it on a case-by-case basis. But we can actually assure you that there will never be a situation where somebody would be denied. Remember, you have to register at the beginning of the year to write exams. And if she feels pregnant along the year, we have to make sure that we make arrangement that they must write.
So there are those support systems?
There are those support systems. We remember in our schools we've got social workers, we've got other professionals. It's not only teachers, we've got other professionals who give that support. But we also involve parents. I remember at one point in Bloemfontein, there was this girl who was highly pregnant. She wanted to write, and he said, the parent must be there. So that now it's a shared responsibility. Give her a special room where she will continue to write. And then some of them have been able to go and pass. So we make sure that nobody gets discriminated because of their gender. Yeah.
Well, Mr. talks about discrimination. There's been a sense, especially among or from rural provinces in particular, that you are perhaps not deliberately, but you do get discriminated against in terms of resources. The provinces are rural. There isn't enough to go around, which then affects the children, because you find that toilets don't get built, or where they are built, like there's no maintenance. And because the provinces are by their nature rural, it takes time to get things fixed, or to get the communication to the department about things that need fixing and that need fixing now.
Yeah, the problem is, Vuyo, in a case like mine, in KZN, 6,000 schools plus, and you don't have enough budget. We have budget cuts, so we do have a challenge. But we always prioritize the toilets. There are things that you don't compromise at school. There are things that you don't compromise. The issue of toilets is critical. So what normally happens when we find that there's a need in a particular school, we try and address it. Another school, we try and address it. We prioritize the issue of toilets. It's not like other things that you can survive without. In our case, we prioritize them. Even if we don't have enough funding, but we make sure of that for each and every school who is in dire need of sanitation, we come in and we try and address it. But to be honest with you, we do have challenges in terms of resources, in everything, even with the infrastructure in terms of classrooms and stuff. But I think it goes with the attitude. Ma'am Angie said something about the cohort of educators that we have now. For them, if they can see that you are with them and you are giving them support, they will complain, but moving with you because they understand the situation. I think it's more of us being with them, going with them, and we understand each other. They have a problem, you come in, you communicate. It comes back to the effectiveness of principals, the circuit offices, the districts. Are you together? Are you tackling challenges together? Because for now, I don't think it's easy to have enough resources I don't think it's possible. But with correct attitude, with you being there, I think the teachers want us to be present. They want us to be there with them and support them. If you've got it there, I don't think you'll have a problem. But the sanitation is a priority. We don't compromise on that one. We try by all means.
I mean, in a second, but to finish a point I started with you, I remember many moons ago going to Limpopo, and where, I mean, the department would build or rebuild schools. Right? And what you found was that the workmanship was shoddy. They collapsed almost as soon as they were finished. And this wasn't just about schools, it was also about houses that were built. I mean, at the time, I remember standing next to these mud houses, you know, and there had been a storm, but the mud houses were intact, but the newly built houses had collapsed. How much of a problem is that still?
It is.
When it comes to school infrastructure now.
Now with the school infrastructure, as a department, we have got implementing agencies that we are also partnering with to make sure that we build faster. That is the first thing that we did. We also have an intervention team, which is of your specialist in terms of your quantity surveyor, your PSP, that whole component that deals with infrastructure. They sit with us in the department. But like the colleague was saying, when we build a school, we'll build according to the need. And in the next 2 years, where you had 700 learners, you are going to then have more than 1,005 learners. So you go back to having not sufficient sanitation, not sufficient classrooms, because the community is growing. And I think that is why we always have to make sure that we continue to assess what we have. But remember, we have to replace very old infrastructure. We also have to make sure that what we build now is state of the art, because the learners that are going there, we are all agreeing that they need to be motivated also by the infrastructure where they are going to school too. So all these factors are still there, but we have improved because of the planning and how the Office of the Minister also gives us support as provinces in terms of how we deal with the backlog.
Have you been able to deal, I mean, with the backlog with the requisite speed, and has the department been responsive? I'm also asking this because I remember there's been a debate raging about whether Department of Education should actually, I remember one time, in fact, it was after, I think, an ANC-NEC meeting where there was a discussion, and the Minister of Education was one of the people who spoke, I mean, at this briefing, when she was putting on the table, as she put it, an idea of perhaps an implementing agency outside, of the department to actually, I think she likened it to a PRASA, or something like that, that would deal with these issues, with these infrastructure issues, because the department, as things stand, may not be able to deal with the backlog that the country has.
The issue of infrastructure is quite a thorny one, because one of the things that I've realized when it comes to infrastructure is the issue of maintenance. We normally do not have sufficient resources for properly maintaining a school. The allocation that goes to a school would say only about 1% should be used for maintenance. But when you look at the school, the ceilings has collapsed. So that money is hopelessly inadequate. So I do not think, I know that the minister has said that there was this kind of discussion, but I don't think that's a solution for me, right? But I know that the minister has also introduced a new way where she says the conditional grant that she's giving us, 60%, must be used, for maintenance. And therefore we need to up the amount of maintenance. We need to make sure that the kind of people that we appoint as provinces, as public works, are people with capacity, right? Because there's no use where you find you appoint people with no capacity and they end up not completing the infrastructure, right? and then you end up using the money. There are times where, the same infrastructure, if you give it to somebody privately or a private school, they can, with the same amount of money, they can build much more than what you do. So I think the problem is there. We need to be able to confront the procurement system that we are using. We need to be able to confront the difficulties of the Public Finance Management Act and make sure that we can be given sufficient capacity to be able to maintain our own infrastructure. Most departments in the country are using public works, for example, as implementing agents. But the problem with the relationship between Department of Education and Public Works, it has not become a relationship of somebody serving you. They end up thinking that they are in charge of this project. They will deliver the school when they want. You will get the school when they want to give it to you. And those are some of the frustrations, the governance frustrations. And we deal with them in our respective executive councils. But from time to time, you have a situation where at the MINMEC, they come up with a particular decision. But the issue of infrastructure, I believe that if departments of education can be empowered in terms of engineers and stuff like that, can be empowered, we will build better infrastructure, even cheaper, because that's really where the problem is.
But is this conversation taking place?
It's taking place. It's difficult. It's not easy. It's taking place. We have had it even when we were in Durban with the minister. We confronted it to say, give us capacity. You can't have a situation where somebody builds you a house, but the only time you can see that house is when the house is complete. Well, you have to be part of the design. You have to be part of all the milestones. And I think this is not what is happening in the Department of Education using Public Works as a service provider.
Now, speaking of difficult conversations and taking you to a point you raised the last time, you spoke about the role of teachers. Of course, we had the minister paying tribute to a lot of hardworking, patriotic, teachers who go out of their way, who have gone out of their way to assist this class, and of course the classes that came before it. But also, in the conversations that have been taking place in the run up to these results, even yesterday, after on the back of the IEB, results, there's a sense among certain stakeholders that teachers, at times hold the department to ransom. There's a sense that they run rings around the Department of Education, including in the province, in the provinces, that they get away with a lot that they shouldn't be getting away with. What is your experience on the ground?
I don't think so. Workers are workers. Even here in SABC, you're not the same. So we treat the case with its merits. You can't, generalize. My experience with educators is I don't know whether it's because I'm an educator, I'm a former educator myself, a unionist for that matter. So I relate with them. I'm sure it's the case even with you. So we don't have that problem. But what I think it's more critical in a format that we have, it's ensuring that there is consequence management. At the level of the school, everybody is doing what is expected of him to do. Then if the case comes to the district, they must, with us here, we play a role of being a boss. You know how a boss behaves. She will come to the factory and greet all the workers, then everything is fine, then go back. But the person who's in charge is somebody who's working with that particular educator. To be honest with you, I've not been experiencing much cases of educators who are not who are misbehaving or who are not doing what is expected of them. But I know there are cases. But what I always do, I make sure that those who account direct to me, they do. I think that's where the challenge is. Whoever who needs to account must account, going down to even to school level. I can't be knowing a case of an educator who comes to school at 9. Who is the principal? I think it's systems. As long as you have, you know, with us in KZN, we are very firm with systems. Systems must be functional. Everybody must account. Everybody must account. I will go to the school and I'll notice that this is not correct. Trust me, I know the person to account.
I mean, things like absenteeism, a work ethic, you know, that, I mean, how did you deal with those kinds of issues as you were busy pushing, you know, I mean, these matriculants and their teachers, I mean, to achieve better results?
I think, like the colleagues are saying, accountability to a subject by an educator. In a school, you have got educators that are dedicated to specific subjects. So when we do follow up on how the school is performing, that is where we start. So each subject is followed. So if you are sleeping on the job, then your part will be identified, and that is the accountability and the system. So by the time we arrive at an overall performance of a school, you would then have to speak to all the subjects. And the minister keeps on emphasizing those subjects that we are supposed to look at. So if an educator is lagging behind, support will then be introduced, because we also have a layer which is called education specialist, where they go to give support to the educators to say, if this is where you are, this is how you're supposed to work. So that at that level we are able to know what is happening and how far is the school going, and the principal should be accountable to their own yard where they are actually governing as a manager.
Quick last word, I'm still run out of time.
Oh, okay. No. I was just saying that it all starts and ends with leadership. Yes. Right? Leadership at the school level, from the principal and his HODs, deputy principals. If they are able to motivate the teachers, if they are able to incentivize the teachers, you find less and less problems of conflict in a particular school. And in fact, many people have said it before. Show me a good principal, I'll show you a good school. Because if a principal is good, firm, not trying to be popular with everybody, but firm, knowing what goals that need to be achieved. Let me tell you one thing, just as you close. We set targets. We set targets in our province, right, for schools. If we say, after looking at everything, we believe that this school can give us 100%. Whether it's an African school, whether it can be in rural areas, wherever. But if you say you can give us 100%, you must then come and account. Why can't you give us 100%? But that motivates everybody, because we then involve even all the teachers. They know the vision. We involve the learners. We involve the parents to know that this school is a 100% school. If we all play our part, and indeed subject advisors and circuit managers. So it's not only the management at the school, it's also the district level and at the provincial level.
Thanks to all of you for coming on the program, but more importantly, thank you for helping the matric class of 2022 achieve better results than previously, 80.1%, but we want more. You saw the IEB results yesterday, 98%. There's no reason why public schools can't achieve that kind of a result. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
And may you do more. That's our show for tonight. To join us again tomorrow evening, same time. Have a good night.